Why, hello, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, you are everyone. We are back for the new release rundown this week after some technical errors, so thank you for sticking with us. So once again, I am joined by Andrew Sagel from Mox Boarding House Bellevue, and he has brought a collection of games that are new releases and things that he wanted to share with folks that have just come out.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you want to start with?
Okay, so actually, I want to start with one game in particular that sparked my interest just because it was a very, very niche category of game, specifically in what the game is about. This is a game called Revolution of 1828, designed by Stefan Feld.
A renowned designer.
Yes, he's had a large catalog of games going back to the mid-2000s that Castles of Burgundy is one of his big hits that a lot of people may know of. So there are people that were pretty excited for this game. Now, the reason this game is really interesting to me initially is the theme. It focuses specifically on the first, what I would call the modern presidential campaign between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. This takes place using smear campaigns against one another, trying to get delegates on your side.
That doesn't sound like politics at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. It is a fair and just game. Actually, it really is. One of the reasons that this game works is it is a game of perfect information once the rounds are set up. So that means that there's no one that's going to have hidden cards or hidden powers, that kind of thing as you go through. Once the game is set up, once each round is set up rather, you know what your opponents can do, you know what I can do, and every action you take lets your opponent get something back effectively.
So it's very strategic.
Yeah, very, very strategic. You might even take a spot a bad press in order to achieve an additional delegate during one of the 4 weeks that make up this campaign.
Cool.
So it ended up being pretty fun to play, actually, though.
So you did have a chance to play it?
Yeah, just one time through, and not even through the full completion, but got the iteration of the game down pretty well.
So the theme is very historical. It's drawing from the real events of that presidential election, and that's what drew you into it.
Right.
But how did the gameplay work? Like, what would you say that this is similar to? Like, if are there any fans of other types of games that you would recommend this in particular to?
Oh, absolutely. This is a action selection game. With limited actions present. Now, the difference in this game, as opposed to many others with that style, is that it is 2 players only. There's a game that I had played previously called Elysium that was about building gods and a pantheon and a story. However, every time you selected an action, it would leave something open for the opponents to take. So any person that is looking for that choice to make every single turn, and still want a very deep and strategic game, this is going to be for you. And you mentioned that this is based on the actual historical events. In fact, the rulebook itself has a large amount dedicated to that.
Great. I noticed that the Pandemic Iberia had something similar. I don't remember if Fall of Rome did, but I really do like kind of the using a game to learn about history, learn about a particular era, incident kind of thing. So this sounds like a really good game for folks who are fans of history, want to explore that in a game format, but also people who want a 2-player, very balanced, strategic, like thought-provoking game.
Oh, absolutely. This game is going to go into a pretty deep amount of strategy as far as many 2-player games go. I would actually put it up there on par with people who really enjoy chess-like games. You're looking at multiple turns ahead, what your opponent's going to be able to do. But it also, due to the setup of the game, there is some randomization as it gets set up, so you have a lot of replay value with this one.
Neat. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so that is going to be Revolution of 1828.
And this is from Renegade Games.
Right.
And the back says that it is the first game in a series about historical events. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're planning on doing. I don't know if the rest of them will be all two-player. But it sounds like Renegade has plans to kind of continue to delve into history and use games to explore that, which is intriguing.
Right, and if they're going to be dedicating as much of the rulebook to that history, and especially the way they present it, utilizing that history in the game, that's going to be a pretty exciting premise.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else you got?
So actually, I wanted to show off a couple here called Logic Land and Witchy Kitty. Both of these are really, really fantastic. We may have to hold those. That'll stand up on its own. So, Logic Land and Witchy Kitty. These are two logic puzzle games. In Logic Land, you actually have a castle and are given a number of clues of where the king could be. And you will go through sussing out from beginner to advanced and expert challenges.
And it looks like it's a flip book, basically.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, each of the challenges is part of the flip book, and then you're using the same castle to figure out where each person is, where the knight is, where the princess is, where the queen is, where the dragon is, that kind of thing. So it's very fun. It works for a younger crowd learning more deduction and logic-based skills, and works just alongside Witchy Kitty, actually. Now, Witchy Kitty is a game where you have a familiar because you are a witch. However, something happened, and your kitty looks very, very different now. There are portions of this kitty that might have crab legs, or a unicorn horn, or a mermaid portion attached.
You might want to zoom in on that just to make sure you can see. Like it's like there's a little flip book that like different sections of the cat looks like you can kind of flip back and forth between different things.
Exactly. There are 4 sections to the cat that you are using potions to actually try and get your cat back to normal.
Well, I mean, I'm going to keep the crab leg cat.
Well, okay, so we can adjust some.
Sure.
We can do some house rules for you.
Okay.
But this game is pretty cool. Another great game that has logic puzzles built into it as the core of the game. There's another game I brought last week called Cat Crimes that was another wonderful logic puzzle game.
And these are all, they seem to be fairly focused towards kids and kind of like teaching them and be educational.
Absolutely.
Okay. Both of them here list like 40 different challenges on them. Like it looks like Logic Land, you have magnetic characters that you can put on. Like, so there's some sort of component where there's like the castle that you put the characters on.
That's correct. Once you get the clues, you start shifting around the characters in the castle and figuring out where the king should be. There's another really great game if you like a game called Outfox.
Okay.
Which is a cooperative game where you're trying to figure out which fox committed a crime before they escape. And you are using the different clues you found to deduce who it could be.
So cat crimes, fox crimes, kingdom crimes, magic crimes. Right. I feel like that the logic game design community seems to have some unanswered crime situations they want to deal with.
Yes.
Okay. All right, what else you got?
Well, after that one, I would like to move over to, let's see here. Let's go with Res Arcana over here, which is this game on the end. So Res Arcana came in, and it has a wonderful set of selections. The reason I want to bring this up is there is an amount of selection tools that are similar to 1828. There are limited amounts of items you are selecting in. Yes.
Okay.
There are limited amounts of items you are selecting each round.
Okay.
And you are trying to acquire specific resources to race to 10 victory points.
Because you're an alchemist who is trying to prepare. Alchemists versus druids.
Yeah. So there's necromancers.
And there's a necromancer.
Yeah. There's.
I think you're burying the lead here, man.
Yeah. What happens is you are trying to use all these different artifacts as well as the cards of your class that you're selecting to achieve different victory statuses.
Okay.
Once you've achieved those, it's a race as you're going through the game.
Sure.
Now, one of the reasons that this has piqued a lot of people's interest is that there are games like Splendor that are extremely popular, and Century Spice Road, where you are collecting resources to acquire cards with victory points.
Yep.
And it's a race. You get to look at what your opponents are doing, you get to look at what's on the board, and you're making your choices every single turn.
So is this the kind of game you would recommend to somebody who had played Splendor and was looking for something like the next step?
Yes. However, this is a distinct step further in strategy.
Okay.
Although you are not, it's not quite the same exact style.
Sure.
You are actually having further interaction with other players. You can remove resources from them. You get to react to that. It does have a depth to the game. However, if you've played games similar to, for example, Century Spice Road or Splendor, you're going to have a great time jumping into this one. Also, it does play 2 to 4 players, which is fantastic. And the playtime isn't all that long. So that's another great choice moving on.
Great. Somebody in chat was curious about whether any of these games satisfy the spite player. Because remember, you promised that you were going to rate everything on a spite rating?
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Spite rating, absolutely revolution.
How much spite?
The most. That is a game that is about spite.
So maximum spite.
Yeah, maximum spite right now in Revolution.
Minimum spite?
minimum spite when you are trying to bring your cat back to its normal form.
And medium spite?
Medium.
Medium to light spite, maybe?
I would say maybe even mild.
Mild spite.
Mild spite.
All
right. From there, though, I want to move on to Planet. This is another sort of resource gathering game.
I've seen this one. This is really neat.
This is a fascinating game. There are many games that you collect resources. There are many games where you are trying to accrue cards based on what you have built in a tableau or something like that. But this game does it in a way that I have not seen succeed this well. This Planet, each player gets a hexagonal planet for themselves that has, it's actually like a 12-sided.
Pentagonal.
Or
it's a dodecahedron.
Dodecahedron, thank you, sorry. Yes, not hexagonal, pentagonal. You get a 12-sided planet. Now, each round you're going to be drafting the elements of this planet. There is forest, there's glaciers, there's dirt, there's sand, there's, what am I missing here? Water,
ocean.
Forest, ocean. Of course, ocean. Every round, though, you are checking your planet to see who has the best environment for certain animals to survive and thrive in. If you have the best environment for the narwhal, you get to grab that card as points.
I like to imagine that like all the animals are just floating through space, being like, okay, who's got the best amenities?
Oh,
and then they just the space whale goes and colonizes your planet.
Yes, they're all in a queue looking at who has the best planet, and then they just go towards it. Then they enter the atmosphere, crash, and then they're part of your planet.
But what I mean, again, just to really emphasize this, the cool, distinct thing about this is you're not just building your tableau on the table. You have a
three-dimensional planet.
You've got a three-dimensional planet. It's magnetic. You are drafting magnetic tiles that stick to your planet that create these biomes that you are then trying to entice these space animals into colonizing.
Yes. It is difficult to look at your entire planet and remember exactly where everything is. Once you put one of these pieces magnetized onto your planet, it stays there. So you have to be careful about how you're crafting these biomes in these regions.
I'd seen a lot of photos of this, and it's just like, because people were posting it, like they would play it at a convention or something like that. And I'd seen a lot of the images, and I wasn't sure what game it was, because they all look really neat to just play with that physical, tactile thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly rewarding, too, when you're looking a little bit ahead to see what animals are drifting further in space and are next to enter the atmosphere. And you are
cleared for landing next. And now I'm just imagining like the penguins coming in from orbit, like all burning up on impact,
and everyone's struggling to get glaciers in place for them. Yeah. That's effectively the game. One of the things that this also shares with a couple of games that we're going to talk about here is a drafting element. You may hear that term. If you're not familiar with drafting, it means that there are You have a number of selections. One person takes one and passes the rest to the next player.
Seven Wonders is kind of a classic entry-level drafting game. What are other good drafting games people might have played?
Another absolutely fantastic one, Sushi Go.
Yep.
Sushi Go is incredibly well
known. The newest one.
If you haven't played Sushi Go, absolutely give it a shot. If you like that element
Another
of
super adorable game.
Oh, sickeningly adorable. Be prepared. The planet here is going to share some of those elements with drafting, but also some of those elements of set collecting, similar to Res Arcana, making sure you have effectively the resources available.
Because it looks like to claim these animals, you need to have the mixture of biomes that they want.
That's correct.
One needs a bunch of desert, one needs some desert plus a mountain, that kind of thing.
Right, and it's not just that you have those requirements, you have to have the best planet.
Well, that's right.
Right.
So how complex is this game, though?
The complexity is actually not that high. It is an unusual game, so there's going to have some complexity, but really that's only for the first round or two. So if you're looking at Planet and you're unsure of whether or not you're going to be, this is your type of game, I encourage you to try it out. Try it out for a round or two. Then you'll really get the feel of the game. You'll understand it actually very, very quickly after placing your first pieces of your biome. And then from there, I think it'll be a breeze.
What I'm kind of trying to ask too is this a good entry game or a game to share with families and casual fans, or is this more of a harder, deeper, more complicated game that folks who want a Euro game or a really complex game are going to get into? Sounds like it's more the former.
Yes, it's definitely more the former. You can introduce friends, family, people that are new to board games in general to Planet. It's also a theme that a lot of people can get behind, apart from the queued up space animals that we are envisioning in this. Seeing the animals.
We're bringing that to this game. That's not
right.
There.
Yeah, it's not canon, but here it is. So Planets, though, it can work for everyone. However, on the Spite scale, it's relatively low. Now you can effectively look at what other people are building on their planets and try and maybe take forest or deserts away from someone, make those resources harder for someone else to acquire more species.
Sure. But this does seem to be in the category of Splendor, Seven Wonders, Century Spice Road, that level of complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. And important to note, there is not an interaction where you get to adjust or change someone else's planet. So you are building your own out of the resources available.
So if you're the kind of person who doesn't like the directly competitive or a screw you element of another game, then you don't have to worry about that here.
Yeah, you get rewarded for your choices, and it feels good the entire way through the game.
Great.
Yeah. The next one I want to bring up is actually, this one's a bit older, of a game called Bunny Kingdom that is another drafting game designed by Richard Garfield, where you are...
How might people know Richard Garfield?
Oh, he's done a couple other small games here and there. There's this one card game called Magic. May have heard of that one. And also, very importantly, Keyforge, also, which we'll be talking about actually later. But Bunny Kingdom, it came out actually a year or two ago.
Is that William Wallace as a rabbit?
According to copyright, no.
Okay. All right.
It is a rabbit with blue paint.
I don't know if you can copyright a historical figure.
Yeah, I guess not.
Doesn't stop people from trying, I suppose.
Yes.
But
he's not named in this necessarily.
I'm going to crack this open.
Sure. So this is another drafting style game. However, in this game, as you unfold the board here, you'll see a large board with a big score tracker on it that is going to denote where items are placed. There's even a grid on this board with numbers and letters that the cards will let you acquire those territories.
But if I know anything about bunnies, no kingdom is big enough to hold all the bunnies that you'll end up with. No. So I'm assuming we're going to have to go to war or something like that.
Actually, this game, similar to Planet, you do not take territories from one another. That's actually one of the attractive elements of this game, is that you are not stealing from someone, you're not conquering from someone. you are rewarded for your choices, but every time you choose a card in this drafting game, you are giving up more to your opponent for them to use.
So am I not like building an empire? Like, is this one kingdom that we're all building?
No, everyone is building their own kingdom.
Okay.
On the same board.
Okay.
So that's the premise of the game. You're building them up. Every turn you're going to be scoring points. The larger fiefs that you're making, according to the resources and the size and the strength of the castles you have in there, are going to impact that.
Okay.
Now, initially, this is 2 to 4 players, but this is not a new release. The reason I brought this today is that the Bunny Kingdoms in the Sky has been released. It is an expansion to Bunny Kingdom that adds a 5th player to the mix.
So now it goes to 5 players.
Now it goes to 5 players. Now there is a kingdom
dragons,
in the sky
Pegasuses,
that also...
Pegasi,
Oh,
a chocobo,
absolutely. It's
a
chocobo.
non-infringing chocobo.
Yeah, non-infringing chocobo. There's some references
There's
here.
like a beanstalk too. Like, is this going to borrow from a lot of like fairy tale imagery and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, there are definitely references that people are going to get here. And this board will connect, though, in multiple different places to the original, which actually changes the strategy of the original territories you're selecting a great deal.
So this adds like a whole new territory in the sky that connects to specific points?
Right, you actually get to place down like rainbows and beanstalks
neat.
of where the Sky Kingdom connects to the original board. So that can change each game, which will change the strategies involved.
Cool.
Yeah. There are some small elements of being able to take resources from one another, but it is not a...
But you don't have to worry about defending your kingdom to an army or anything.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, all the pieces here are just showing the territory that is owned by or controlled by a player.
So what other games would you compare this to?
Ooh, so that one's a little tricky. There is a really fun deck building game called Tyrants of the Underdark, where you have to pay careful attention to all the territories that are being
I
controlled.
love that game.
Yeah, however, as you may know about that game, there is conflict.
That is very high on the spite scale.
Very high on the spite scale. There's a lot of conflict going into that game.
I like to play the spies.
Right. However, there are some elements of it actually that are shared somewhat with like Planet here, or even with something like Ticket to Ride or Trekking the National Parks, where you are looking to get your piece in a territory and make, excuse you. We're good.
All right.
So
we're safe.
So that we can gain points later on in the game. The choices early on do make a difference, but based on the cards that you're given, there is an amount of...
Or the cards that you draft, too.
Right, but those cards are going to be out of a massive deck, so you don't necessarily know what's going to be available to you the next round.
Okay.
Yeah. You get to make a lot of different choices as you're going through.
So on the complexity scale, where would you put that one?
Oh, this is actually important to talk about with this game, because a lot of people will see this title, they'll see the image on the front, and they may immediately make a judgment call and say, oh, this is for kids.
This is obviously for kids.
Right.
What else could it be?
Right. This is actually a reasonably complex game as far as the strategy involved and the choices you're making when you draft those cards, looking at the board and seeing who's ahead and how to stop them from getting further ahead. That can lead to some amount of analysis paralysis, perhaps, but that's if you really, really dive in deep. I would say many games have an age rating on them, a suggested age range. This is a 14 plus. And I wouldn't stray too far from that. Certain people, I mean, you could go so far down as, like, I would say 10, if they're very, very interested in this style of play and in the theme.
Well, it sounds like it has a fair amount of strategy and juggling of what you're doing, which requires you to really kind of be paying attention a whole lot.
Right.
Although on that note, because you mentioned that it's relatively low in spite, but it's fairly complex. We're all kind of building our own empires. But what player interaction is there other than the drafting element?
There are some cards that you can play that let you take resources from other players.
But not a ton.
Not a ton.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a game shifting amount necessarily,
but it does allow, if one player is behind, it lets them catch up a little bit, gets back in the game, or keep one player from going too far ahead.
Is there an engine building aspect in that then? In that, like, you know, do the actions that you take at the end of the game, are they different from the actions you were taking at the beginning of the game?
No, the actions are going to be the same, but they compound on what you've done earlier to get you more and more points.
So there is a little bit of an engine building kind of thing. So,
Yes.
so this is the kind of game that you would describe as, you know, everybody's kind of building their own engine on the same board.
Correct.
And, you know, you interact mainly in the choices that you make, denying other people possibly a choice,
Absolutely.
as opposed to, like, directly, you know, attacking them or competing
Right.
with them.
I may take something that will score me no points just to keep you from connecting two big kingdoms.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. And that's going to be Bunny Kingdom and Kingdom in the Sky.
And then, so the expansion just came out.
Yeah, the expansion just came out, and we're excited to see how that plays out in more of the games in the store.
Great.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, while we're talking about Richard Garfield, I want to bring up Keyforge. Actually, I'm going to open this one up here. So, Keyforge, this is the expansion called the Age of Ascension.
Well, why don't you start off, because Keyforge is a relatively new game.
Right.
Why don't you kind of let the viewers, in case they haven't had a chance to play it yet, can you summarize like, what is unique about Keyforge? What's the hook? And then how does Keyforge play?
Yeah, Keyforge as a game is absolutely fascinating. When we were hearing about this game in development, many of us just thought it seemed impossible. But it is a game where a person acquires a deck, and the deck is this small piece here. It is unique to every other deck that's ever been produced in this game. There's no other deck like this, and you can't alter that deck.
I think they were calling them like the unique deck, unique card game, something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's a unique deck game. So that each of these decks has a very specific, unique name to it. In fact, all of the card backs for each of the decks is unique only to that deck. So you can't even switch any cards out if you wanted to.
So what you're saying is that these decks are unique and randomized.
Right.
And they're like randomized / procedurally generated.
Yeah, procedurally
so
generated,
each deck that you get, that is the only instance of that deck.
That is correct.
So, like, for example, this one here is O. Wells, the Launchpad Pilot,
right.
and Salty Bradman of the Quarter. Like, these are your Archons, I think, for these decks is what they're called.
Right. Those are the two decks that came in my starter box here.
Okay.
And no one else has these decks.
And the back of the deck, like, has the deck list for what's in it.
That is correct.
You know, like, this is in this, and this combination of cards, because it's the three houses with the Archon, with the cards in them, only appear in this deck.
That is correct.
Great. And so then how does the game play?
Now, the gameplay is also fascinating because it is, it's not a game where you're trying to destroy your opponent. It is a game where you're trying to forge keys, thus the name of the game, Keyforge. You are trying to acquire a resource and hold on to it until your turn begins.
I won. I just win.
Well, or you can throw the box down. That's another way to play. You take one of these keys, and then you will just flip it over when your turn begins, spending the resources required to do so.
You're collecting amber, I think, right?
That is correct.
Amber.
Yes,
Like
amber.
Steampunk amber.
You are playing creatures, you're playing artifacts, and effectively
So in that way, it
spells.
sounds a lot like Magic.
Right.
Okay.
Again, designed by Richard Garfield, but it is very different because it takes any of the construction elements out of it. You don't have to know the entire library of Magic cards in order to make the best deck that
You just need to
want
spend,
play.
what, like $10? And
Every
like,
deck's $10.
So $10, you get a random deck, you give it a try, maybe it's overpowered, maybe it's weak, but you just give it a shot and see what happens.
That was the other component that we were actually, as gamers, we were concerned about. Someone was going to get the most powerful deck, and that was going to be it. They would just crush you every time. Turns out that not only are these suspiciously well balanced, but they actually have an element in place, designed in place, to counteract a deck that happens to win more than others. There are chains that can be put on a deck through competitive play in different formats that reduce the amount of cards a person gets to draw, which can inhibit them during
Basically,
play.
giving better decks, decks that have been winning consistently, accumulate a handicap. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, a temporary restriction within the game that will affect how well they can perform.
Interesting.
And there are even cards in the game that give you those restrictions mid-game because they have powerful effects.
Sure.
Now, the first set was a large success, and we had a lot of people coming in and playing it. It's incredibly fun, especially for Magic players if you want to take a break from something incredibly competitive, if you're playing either competitive standard or modern or even legacy, or if you are a person that enjoys Star Realms or Hero Realms, a quick little
Well, the
one-on-one
randomized
games.
decks seem to create a really easy entry point for folks.
Oh, absolutely. Once you know how the card interacts, you are ready to play.
So Keyforge was a huge hit. It came out at Gen Con last year. It's been pretty hot since then. So what is Age of Ascension? Is this the first expansion for it?
Yes,
And
this is
what is different about it?
So this is the first expansion for it, and they were very careful to mention that the cards in this are not stronger.
Which
They're
of these
not-
decks is the best, though?
Oh,
There's what, like 20? Yeah.
third one down in this
Okay,
row.
great.
So there are no new houses. There are 7 houses of cards in this game. Those haven't been altered. There are just new cards being added. They're not better. They're not stronger. They are different.
And the houses are basically like the factions.
Correct.
So again, if you look here, there's the symbols at the top. Those are the houses that this deck
That
supports.
is correct.
Okay.
Right. So they made some changes to how a couple of cards interact, but not all that much that's going to affect how you're going to be playing the game. If you have their wonderful actually overview and set of rules that comes with the starter box. They have a couple of playmats that really help you get started as well. And this game can be taught relatively easily in about 10 minutes, maybe 15. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, fascinating game. Very, very low entry point to just be able to have everything you need to get in.
And so this is a new starter set for this expansion too, right?
Correct.
Because didn't the old starter set not have 2 decks in it, or was it 1 deck? Or?
Originally, the starter set that came out for the game had 4 decks in it,
Oh,
2
okay.
of which were starter decks to help you learn the game.
Oh.
However, I think they found that more people just wanted their own randomized decks, just like many you would get out of a box here. So this starter pack comes just with 2 random decks, as well as all of the tokens you will ever need to play the game.
So like
effectively.
there are a lot of tokens in here.
Right.
So the starter pack is mainly you're buying 2 decks plus a bunch of tokens.
Right, and the price point's in line with it. It's $25 for the starter set now, which I think is a fantastic spot to start in on the game, and you have a great amount for 2 people to play.
What's so Keyforge's theme is weird. Can you go into that a little bit for folks who kind of like their game to have like a theme and a story?
Right.
What's going on?
You're battling for a limited amount of effectively magical power that will let you forge these great keys of power. You're not actually trying to destroy one another in this game.
Sure.
Which is although there are a lot of elements of combat that go into this to interact with and destroy one another's creatures, but they are primarily used actually to just generate a resource.
Yeah, but you're playing these archons who are all like these really weird random elements, and the different houses seem to have like different themes with them as well. So what's the kind of thematic tie-in there?
Ooh, well, so there's more themes to the characters and the play styles, and less a heavy emphasis on necessarily the lore to the game.
Sure.
Which is a nice aspect of the game where, again, it's kind
Seems
of
like
a low
it's a
point of
little
entry.
more lighthearted.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. I think you have one game.
Right.
Oh, hey.
I'll take care of that one. Then I have one other game that, although this is not technically a new release, we've been out of this game for a long time, and then we finally got this back in. One of the reasons I brought this game called Ravine, which is a cooperative game of survival. One of the reasons I brought this was people were asking about cooperative games that you could play.
Sure.
And this one has a really, really interesting design to it. this game takes place when you have just crash landed from a plane, and you have to survive a certain amount of nights, some relatively indeterminate amount of nights, until rescue arrives. Mm-hmm. Now you are taking turns and risking your own health to try and get resources to continue to play. This is a game that is very similar to those that may have liked Pandemic. You may have liked Forbidden Desert or Forbidden Island, and you want to try something else that is, you can definitely lose in a very fun way, but it is really, really interesting trying to make it through together.
Sure.
Notable parts of this game, though, are the madness elements.
Okay.
As you're trying to survive with the limited resources that you have, if you are very, very close to the end, for you, Derek, you might go mad.
Very, very close.
Now, this is also a game that has a very lighthearted element to it as well. Some of the madness may be that you are required to hug someone.
Oh, hey.
And you hold on.
All right.
And you hold on.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to let go in this terrifying situation either.
Well, right. But the thing is, Derek,
I really just need someone to validate my existence during this game, because we will be rescued at any moment now, right?
Right.
Any moment we're going to be rescued, and then you can stop hugging me?
Yes.
At any time?
At any time.
Anytime
It
now.
could happen.
Great.
But Derek,
Uh-huh.
in my madness, if I let go first, I lose health.
Well, I don't, so...
Okay. So those are the kinds of things that actually may happen in this game. You're trying to make it through. You're making tough choices. You're trying to risk it for
these are
food.
the madness.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're trying to risk for food?
You're trying to look for food. You can build a limited number of items that may help you. You can build shelter to shelter you from weather effects. You can build spears to fend off animals.
So it sounds a little bit like Galapagos.
Yes.
How does it compare to that?
Actually, it compares pretty well to Galapagos.
Does it have the same kind of like, you sometimes have to vote people off the island kind of thing?
That sort of happens. Effectively, if we were playing and an animal attacks us, I could use my spear to fend it off from you, but my spear would break, and then I may take the brunt of that attack. So there are choices being made. And then as we are getting lower and lower on health, we may get some madness cards.
Okay. So your madness is a battle of wits. So what do you have to do?
So if I were to get the Battle of Wits, I would have to choose a category, like pizza toppings, 80s movies, that kind of thing. All their players must take turns naming things from this category. The first player who hesitates or repeats an answer loses 1 heart.
I have to violently throw all my cards and only keep what lands face up.
Right.
Okay.
The next is all players must name a different member of my immediate family. Anyone who fails loses a heart.
I have to sing from now on.
Right.
So how important, because these madness cards remind me of Mountains of Madness.
Absolutely.
How important, how central is that element to the game? Is that just something that might come up, or?
Oh, no, people will go mad.
Okay.
Absolutely. People will be going mad in this game. While it is a survival game, it plays pretty quickly. You're looking at a 15 or 20 minute game here.
Okay.
So you can play it a number of times, but with the madness cards that are involved here, there is a little bit of levity. There's also a little bit of familiarity. For example, hugging someone directly might not be the best game for strangers to jump in and play.
Sure.
So with a dedicated play group that you've played with before, or just people you know, this is a fantastic choice.
It also looks like there's kind of some other elements here, like you have the plane ticket for who you were on the plane when it crashed.
Oh yes.
Does that kind of control like what items and stuff you get?
Yes, everyone gets their plane ticket when they crash landed, and along with that comes sometimes a reusable and sometimes a one-time use item that you get to start with, kind of give you a little bit of a leg up going into the nights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it seems like it has it's a cooperative, fully cooperative.
Yes.
Okay. So a fully cooperative survival game with some light-hearted madness elements and crafting and things like that. Yeah, so there's just lots of little different kind of things that you can engage with here. So
right. And again, while this is not specifically a new release this week, we were able to just recently get this back into stock, so I was really excited to get to share it with people again.
What is do you have to reach in the bag for something at some point?
Oh no, that's just to hold the tokens.
So it's just stylish.
Yeah, it's just stylish. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
fantastic little game called Ravine. If you're interested in more co-op games, feel free to check that one out. And I do want to mention, however, on the salt meter.
Salt meter.
And the spitefulness.
And the spitefulness.
It can go high.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I thought you're cooperative.
Yeah, you are cooperative, but I mean, just yesterday, someone opted to use their taser on saving another player and left me to die.
Well, did you deserve it?
I mean,
were you hugging them?
No.
Okay.
Not that
well, maybe
time.
that was the problem.
Right. Maybe that was the problem. I'm gonna have to reevaluate my strategy.
But that's pretty good. I've heard a lot of really good stuff about that game, so it's nice to see that it's kind of back available again.
Right, and also the art style to it. I just want to show this box again. Very, very cool style. That is throughout the entire game.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah, the whole game kind of has that like very clean style.
Yeah. So check it out.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks again. I believe that's all we have, right?
Yeah, and that's all we have for this week.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us. Did you want to talk about Mox Boarding House at all?
Absolutely. The games you've seen here today, many of these we have available at Mox Boarding House to play or to purchase. We want you to come in. We're open until midnight every night, both in Ballard and in Bellevue. However, if you are not around Ballard or Bellevue and you also happen to be around Portland, later this year we are going to have a Mox in Portland as well, where you get to enjoy games like these any day of the week.
Great. So
we'd love for you to come in, try out our games, and tell us what you think as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And next week we should have you back again with another selection of games that have come out that week.
Oh yeah.
All right. Unless anybody has any questions, and I don't think I've seen anything else pop up in chat, thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next week. Remember, Table Takes is Fridays at 11 a.m. The new release roundup is Fridays at 12:30. On Wednesdays, we have the Fireside Chat with Peter Atkinson starting at noon on noon Pacific time, and he's been covering the history of Magic with people who are there from the very beginning. On Monday night Pacific time, I believe at 5 p.m., we have the Brothers Murph, and they play a board game and really engage with chat. So we have a bunch of other shows on Twitch that you should check out, so remember to follow us. My production crew has instructed me that you should punch that follow button and slam the subscribe, maybe? I don't know, punch and stab, something like that. They seem to be getting very violent and excited over there. I think they may just be getting a little punchy. But thanks for joining us. Check out some of our other shows, and we will see all of you around.
Absolutely. Have a good one.